identification numbers is supposed to be shielded by laws, secure servers, and trusted institutions as well. But here in Nigeria, that trust has been shaken again and again. From shocking investigative reports uncovering illegal websites selling NIN details for as little as 150 naira, to Nigeria now topping Africa's list for breached email accounts and a staggering 119,000 data breaches recorded in just the first quarter of this year. The question is, how safe is our information? Now, despite the existence of the Nigeria Data Protection Act of 2023 and agencies that are tasked with enforcing it, breaches keep occurring. Some so bold the perpetrators even advertise their services online.
So today we're asking, what is driving these breaches? Who's responsible, and how do we rebuild the trust of a population growing wary of hearing your data is safe when clearly it isn't? Joining us to unpack this and these are these guests. We have Daniel Uba, Head of Innovation at Flowliz Nigeria Limited. We also have in another location, Timile Akimoyeje, reporter at the Foundation for Investigative Journalism, who has been on the front lines uncovering these illegal data sales.
Also joining us live in the studio is Habib Eyinati Esquire. He's a privacy and data protection as well as expert, as well as associate with ENC Legal. Gentlemen, welcome to the program.
You're welcome, gentlemen. Let's get started. So, who do I ask first? Habib or Daniel? Is my data safe? Truly, honestly. Tell me, Daniel.
Well, your data is safe, but maybe in not all situations. And it's good we try to get people who may not be conversant with the subject matter to understand what data breach simply means. So data breach are security incidents that leads to unauthorized access to your personal data. Data like your email, your phone number, your BVN, your NIN. So your data may be safe or not, depending on who is processing that data at a particular time. Because both public and private institutions have access to our data.
Okay.
Take, for example, fintechs. Take, for example, government institutions. So in the course of today's conversation, I believe we'll be able to discover how safe our data is.
Let's not forget telecoms, because they always ask for the NINs as well.
Exactly.
And those people who meet you at events and ask you, please, can I have your email? I never give it to them. Is that a right course to take when I never give out my email address to random folk who just say, okay, sign here your number and your email address? Because I've always thought that was wrong. Habib.
Yes. So, well, thank you very much. Let me start from where you stopped as regards, is my data safe? So asking that question is asking yourself, is my money safe? Because you have money in the bank, you have money in your wallet. So like I said, so it depends on who is protecting that data. It depends on the measures you put in place to access that data. If it is if you are the one, keeping your own data, right? The password to your phone, the PIN to your bank, your wife might know about it, your kids might know about it. So whether it is safe or not depends on how you manage that data. But when it comes to third parties, fintech, telecoms, and all that, so that obligation has left you, it has gone to them. It is now how they keep that data. But one truth is, there's no way we can absolutely prevent data breach. It's going to happen. Just that we have to ensure that we mitigate the risk. So when it comes to people meeting on the road and say, okay, please, could you please fill this form, give us your name, give us your email. See, so a lot of issues are around that. Because number one, they are doing something called data processing at that point. They want to collect your data for certain purpose, or purposes rather. But then they have one obligation under the Nigeria Data Protection Act, which is the first one is that they have to notify you of why they want to get that data, for what purpose, for how long are they going to keep it, and all that. So not just saying, please, can you give us data? You have your full right at that point not to give them your data. However, if you would have to give them your data, you need to ask from them, why am I giving you this data? So either they're going to give you a form, which is a notice, or they refer you to a link where you can go and read about the privacy policy. So if they fail to give you that information, that's a breach. That's a breach of law when it's called
Long and short, it's not necessary to give them that data. I have a right to say, no, I don't need
your full choice.
Yeah.
Let me ask you, right, it's very alarming that about 119,000 breaches have happened in just the last quarter of last year, and there are websites that are actually selling data as low as 150 naira. And we have agencies and laws that are supposed to be protecting Nigerians. And so one has to ask where the enforcement lies in all of this. and what rights that, Nigerians have to want to, go after data privacy for themselves, and seeing that there are agencies who are supposed to be safeguarding and ensuring that these leaks don't happen.
So thank you very much. So, well, let me try to address the question, right? So, yes, there's a report that, we have at least 119,000 data breaches in the first quarter. The reported ones.
The reported.
A lot of others are not being reported, right? So it's unfortunate. It's unfortunate. We might think that, okay, 119 is just too much. In advanced countries, in fact, Nigeria I think we're on the 34th of the ladder when it comes to countries that have experienced, the number of data breaches in the world. US is the head, like over 60 million data breach every year, right? So it's not as if, having data breach is really a bad thing. But then we mustn't sleep, close our eyes, and allow our data to be sold. So the truth is, the way we have black market for oil, the way we have black market for drugs, the same way we have black market for personal data, because data is money. Imagine someone gain access to the NIN details of all Nigerians and sells it in the black market. That's a lot of money for that person, and we are all at risk, that we can't even imagine. So when it now comes to enforcement, that's where the problem is. We have laws on everything in Nigeria. Even about AI, we have laws that regulate AI indirectly. Now we even have direct laws. So, but the problem is always the enforcement. So who are to enforce data privacy laws in Nigeria? Well, the principal agency is the Nigeria Data Protection Commission, but then it's not the only one. CBN too also has, certain obligations when it comes to enforcement. FCCPC, that's the Consumer Protection Commission, also have right to enforce. And well, if I want to be fair, I think they are trying their best. Like recently, Facebook was fined $220 million or thereabouts. But the truth is, but the truth is, they can't sit in their offices and know these things, except to take these things to them, right? So we as citizens, we need to know what is meant by data breach. And when there's a threat to our data, we need to report to the appropriate, agency.
But how would I know?
That's the education we're talking
Yeah,
about.
how would I know
There's no
that there has
education.
been a breach?
Exactly.
I'm sure we'll come back to that.
The rest. Very quickly, we've been informed that Timileyin joins us now. Timileyin is a journalist, a reporter with FIJ, which is the Foundation for Investigative Journalism. Timileyin, you have been at the front line covering, this data breach, and you also reported of a website that was selling, just illicit selling our data on the black market. Talk to me about your findings and just how dire is the situation.
All right, thank you. Good morning. So the issue is kind of widespread. We've been documenting instances of data breaches on the black markets since as far back as 2023. And I think that was when the NDPA, the act that regulates data management, so data processing, was signed into legislation. So, of course, the entire thing is still in the nascent state in Nigeria. But regardless, there've been quite a number of websites, pages where you can buy these things at almost nothing price in Nigeria. In 2023, FIJ documented Express Verify. On Express Verify, which as low as 250 naira, you can buy data of Nigerians. Again, in 2023, NIN prints, NIMC Verify. And the thing these websites do is to mooch off the vulnerabilities or the issues with data management of the data processors that are government agencies. So there are quite a number of them, they are quite rampant, and data is actually very cheap. So there is the part where the database, we cannot even guarantee the safety or the security of our national database. And there's the part where, of course, these agencies are mandated to give out or provide data to the relevant organizations, telecos, banks, and all of that. So there's that lapse in regulation, there's that lapse in enforcement where we know that we have a database, we know that our data gets to some people, but we are not sure of the extent of regulation. Okay, where is this breach coming from? Is this from the NIMC? Is this from the private institutions? Is it from government institutions? As to the websites that are selling data, some of them get this data from individuals that are licensed by the NIMC. Some of them use the API that the NIMC provides to the third party. So the question, it begs the question, who exactly is responsible? Where in that pipeline is our data leaking? or why is our data leaking in the first place? And then it boils down back to the regulatory agency, like how far or how strong is your regulation? There are laws, there are fines, there are penalties, but how robust is the implementation of the regulation?
Now, Timilay, I have a question for you. I'm also going to note, Daniel, that I have this question might extend into his. But Timilay, from your findings, what do you discover that most of these data that are acquired by or that are sold, what are they being used for exactly?
Great. So there's the part where your data is supposed to be private, and there are a lot of implications, possible implications for data breach. So originally, or on the surface, our findings only show that, okay, you can get this person's data off this website at very cheap price. Now, I'm going to list out a couple of implications now. There is impersonation. There is, in 2022 or 2023, a court in Nigeria prosecuted, I'm not going to give specifics now, I can't remember the names, so prosecuted an individual because his name, his identity was used to perpetrate a fraud. So you find instances like that a lot. You find when the police wants to trace criminal activities, what they would need is your data. So if my data is easily accessible on the black market, anybody could impersonate me, anybody could use my name, anybody could use my identity, anybody could have my address. For journalists, for journalists and human rights defenders, if my data is easily accessible on the black market, because when you register with the NIMC, when you have your NIN, you have your address, you have your date of birth, you have all of those things. If my data is easily accessible on the black market, then I'm not safe. Anybody could look for me as an investigator. That's one of the risks I am predisposed to. Anybody could look for me. Anybody could come to my house to attack me, to do any sort of thing, because my address is simply on sale at the black market. So those are some of the implications. Impersonation is a thing. Security, you're not even safe. Digital security, your email address, your name, your signature, your address, all of these things give fraudsters an extra level of advantage if they want to access your money, if they want to wipe your money. Well, you see a lot of these cases. FIJ reports quite a number of social justice cases where you have people, I got 300,000 naira deductions from my account. I got 200,000 naira deductions from my account. I don't know, I did not authorize this. But of course, somebody that has your phone number, that has your email address, your signature, just needs a little bit of street smarts to access your money or to wipe your data or to move your money from one place to the other. So those are some of the implications of data breaches on these black market websites.
Okay. Well, thank you very much, Timilay. Let me come in here with Mr. Obah now. It's very obvious that whether we like it or not, if we stop data circulation, we are going to impact innovation, whether we like it or not. Even our Instagram gathers data. So it's not just us giving it to the banks or financial institutions, or, each time you go on your website, on your apps, or you're downloading an app, they're asking you for some of these data. So when it comes to the Nigerian instance, the Nigerian financial institutions or institutions generally, what exactly are the vulnerable spots that you've noticed that inside of this management or security handling, thank you, of data?
Thanks. So one thing we should understand is some of the reasons why this data breach are successful is because Nigeria lacks data sovereignty. Majority of our database are not within our control. Data are stored outside Nigeria because we use cloud solutions. And these cloud solutions are also subject to other privacy laws, which the NDPC may not be able to enforce. So we need to understand that Nigeria has to take data sovereignty seriously, not also leaving out the fact that aside the financial sector, every other sector from MDAs to healthcare still run legacy solutions, which are prone to vulnerabilities. It means that some of the solutions they are running reached their end of life and are no longer supported by the vendors who provide the solutions. So Nigerians must understand that using applications that are not supported by vendors poses risk to the ecosystem. Though the financial sector has been driving innovation and most of their systems are not within that record of being the end of life data. However, we also need to look at the fact that many organizations, when they launch their mobile app, they don't do vulnerability assessment, they don't do data privacy impact assessment. So this poses risk to users of their platform. So if we can reduce some of these instances that leads to vulnerabilities, I believe Nigeria will be well positioned to protect the digital assets of Nigerians and foreigners who also are privileged to have their data processed by Nigerian entities.
Daniel, you are the head of innovation at FlowLeaks,
Exactly,
Nigeria
yes.
Limited. And so I have to ask you about private sector coming in. Can they play in this field in terms of data privacy? Is it that the Nigerian government or the agencies who are in charge of securities, data security, sort of their hands are full and tied and they need more innovation? And can private sector come in to make it more tighter?
Globally, business is being driven by the private sector.
Right.
So, and they've been in this sector making innovation. I know private institutions that have cloud servers in Nigeria, though it may still be at the early stage. So the private sector has a whole lot to play. And what they should also look at is retraining their staff, because the workforce for data protection is still very, very low. The skills in the sector is still low, though I know government has some projects like the 3MTT program that has increased the number of skilled personnel. But if you look at it averagely, how many certified data protection officers do we have in Nigeria? The numbers are still low. They can't meet our teaming need. The population we have should give us more opportunities to get young people certified in this ecosystem. So we need to look at the skills gap. Also, we need to look at private sector investing in infrastructure. Because if you don't control your infrastructure and you depend on foreign entities, they can use your data for marketing. They can use your data for research. And you would not be able to regulate them because, one, you don't have the keys. They have the keys. So we need to look at getting the private sector to invest in the sector, and that will bring about growth, you understand?
Growth indeed. But Habib, I have to ask you, right? Lawyers like to use lacuna, so permit me to use the word lacuna. When we look at the laws itself that is supposed to be, protection for Nigeria's data privacy, you've studied the law, you know it. So I have to ask you, are there any gaps? What, if you were to restructure it, what would be some of the 3 priorities that you would want to focus on? But most importantly, what are the lacunas in there?
Okay, thank you very much for an interesting question. So, well, there is no law, such law, that doesn't have its lacuna, as you said, right? So, currently in Nigeria, the principal law governing data privacy is the Nigeria Data Protection Act, and then recently they released a guide. So that is the guideline to the implementation of general application and implementation guidelines to the NDPC. So the guideline is like an explanation, an extensive explanation of the hack, how you should apply it and all that. So what are the top 3 priorities when it comes to enforcement? I think I'll start from accountability on the part of government. You see, people talk about privacy breach in large number, and in those instances it involves government. Like Timileyin said, there are websites that if you search them, you would know, if I put your name there, I would know the number of companies in which you are a director there. Not CAC website too, right? And then we're talking about the issue of Express Verify. So there is no way this information would leak without somebody within the government, whether officially or formally or informally, leaking people's data. So, you're right out of Facebook, that you even find it difficult to enforce, the sanction you're given. So what measures are you taking within government agencies to train people about, to train government staff about data handling? So where there is data breach, what measures are you taking to punish such persons? So the enforcement should start from the government side before running after, chasing the cloud, chasing the public and say, we are fine Facebook today, we are fine Meta tomorrow, we are, all that. So there are a lot of issues going, within government agencies. So I feel that the fact that the NDPC is not an independent, agency is a big problem, right? It's like you want to go and arrest your dad. I mean, it's going to be difficult, right? Mm-hmm. So I think number 1 is that NDPC needs to be independent. So number 2 is that, so recently, we have what we call the cloud computing policy of Nigeria. So, I mean, it's a very ambitious policy that talks about, okay, what are it categorizes, data in Nigeria into 4. So some data, so I can't exactly recall, the particular categorization. I think paragraph now there about talks about the categorization. Talks about data that must be stored in Nigeria, data that must be stored on site, and data that may be stored maybe outside Nigeria. But the truth is, where is the infrastructure? Right? Because to set up data center is not chicken change. And if government wants to set up data infrastructure, there's no trust. I mean, I would not be comfortable that the government is
capable.
Exactly. So like I said, we need private agencies to come into place to do that. But then where is the market? People prefer to go to the US, to go to the Netherlands to do that. So I think that there should be partnership within the government and private individuals should be encouraged to ensure that we have local data stations in Nigeria. Let me tell you, in the United States have access. I think recently this year they passed a law that allows them to have access to all data stored hosted in their in their country. So even if the data of our president is stored in I don't want to mention any brand name. So and that's cloud infrastructure is hosted in the US, right? US government can even have can gain direct access to any kind of whether sensitive or not sensitive. So far it is stored there. So we need number one, independence of the the commission. Yeah. So number two, we need to have local infrastructure in the country. And then number three is there's something we call cross-border data transfer. I mean, it still boils down to having local infrastructure. Most of our data are not being hosted in the country, right? We are being hosted outside the country. But all over the world, there are measures that are in place when it comes to transferring data out of the country, right? So in
at least like a gatekeeper.
Framework, exactly. So cross-border data transfer is it's transferring
sharing information
exactly
in most secure manner
exactly
between
to
one country to another country.
So there are measures all over the world, right? And then there are safeguards. But as far as Nigeria is concerned, that safeguard is not sacrosanct yet. Even the guide that was released few months ago did not really talk about how this should be done. There are instruments that you need to put in place to when transferring data out of the country, like standard contractual clauses, BCR and all that. So these things are not in place because the government, NDPC, ought to be the one to come out with these things or to sanction these things. But these things are not in place. So we are still, in the dark as regards, that sacrosanct measure that you need to take when you transfer data out of the country. And every minute we transfer data out of the country from Nigeria to other countries. So I think we need to plug these holes.
Just like I have Timileye, who's on. Timileye, my next question is for you, and then I'm going to jump back in here again. Timileye, now in your findings, your discovery, how do people normally get to know that their data has been sold or that their privacy has been breached? Do individuals actually know at any point in time that they have had a breach?
Okay, I don't think so. So in July, I reported how the Oyo State Teaching Service Commission left a bucket, essentially like a drive, a cloud file on their website. And on that cloud file, you'd see for hundreds of people, you see their data from their certificates, their birth certificate, their medical records. I believe those people applied to the Teaching Service Commission for employment. When I documented that story and called the attention of the Teaching Service Commission to it, we'd expect that because according to the NDPA, people whose data have been breached have the right to know by the agency responsible for processing that data. But the Teaching Service Commission or the Oyo State government did not come out to acknowledge that, okay, this happened, and did not come out to offer any sort of recluse or comfort, so to speak, to these people. So in Nigeria, a lot of us don't even understand or know. I mean, you go on X, for instance, and you see people willingly or voluntarily releasing their information. A lot of us don't even know what constitutes data privacy breaches. And a lot of us don't even understand the implications. If we see it, be staring at us in the face. And a lot of times, we cannot tell until we start feeling the consequences. Someone will only know that, oh, I should not have given my passwords or my email address or my even house address to a random stranger until they suffer the consequences. So I think there's still a lot to do on the part of the agency that regulates data in terms of sensitization, and the part of the NOA too, because I think they are supposed to be an agency that informs Nigeria. And like Habib said the other time, I think that government agencies need to be held more accountable. I've documented about 6 or 7 cases of data privacy breaches from all contexts and angles in the past 2 months. And there's the agencies that are most culpable, or the people that are most culpable are government agencies, the NIS, the Nigerian Immigration Service. In 2023, someone found that if you tweak a part of their URL, just by putting digits, you can get people's appointment data. I tried it and it worked. Wow. There has been no calls for sanctions, there has been no punishment. They've not announced anything to that effect. The Oyo State Tescom is another example. The NIMC too, although the NIMC will tell you that their database is very secure, but we see websites where you can buy data, where you can sell data on the black market. So people would not know. People don't even consider these things serious enough until they feel the consequences. Until they feel the consequences. And as such, I feel that I think that government agencies should be more proactive in sensitizing people and also protecting individuals' data. Because who knows? Nobody knows. Nobody knows what these things are. Nobody understands the extent to which they could be dangerous or could be damning until they feel the consequences.
Okay. Now, thank you very much, Timileyin. Daniel, now, when I download music or if I use music on any of my material and I put it online, I'm flagged. So that means there's some sort of encryption. When it comes to data, is there any innovation that will help or could help or that is in place where my data being used somewhere else could flag me, letting me know that, oh, your data is being back marketed? Is there any such?
Okay. Now, one thing we should understand is both the user and the organization who is processing the data have obligations. Mm-hmm. So let's look at the user.
Responsibility for the user.
One thing you should look at is you should try to make sure you have multi-factor authentication. Because if you just depend on your username and your password, that is not enough to secure your data. For organizations, they have a duty of care. Just as Timileyin said, whenever there's a data breach, they have to report it, inform the data subject, and also carry out some remediation. So there are controls both the organizations and individuals should implement so that whenever there are instances of security incidents, because we are only focusing on data breaches, but data breaches starts from security incidents. Mm-hmm. Security incidents are actions that may lead to data breaches. So we should not let it lead to a data breach before we take action. Mm-hmm. So we should start curbing it from that point we discover it's a security incident.
So to bring it full circle now, when we bring in the law, Habib, what obligation do I have or no? What recourse do I have when I identify that my data has been misused?
Sue everybody.
Yeah, but then again, in fact, let me rephrase the question, Habib. How much of a disaster are agencies like Timileyin has just mentioned looking at in the future if everybody was to sue everybody?
So let me start from where you stopped. So there's a website called Have I Been Pwned? PAWNED. So if you type it, you put your email there. So it's going to tell you if your email has been compromised.
Are you sure they're not gathering data themselves? Because you see how enticing these websites are.
Exactly. So I got that from a cybersecurity expert, and the first question I asked the person was, what is the integrity of this platform? Well, relying on the person's on the person's opinion, judgment, it was like, this is very bad. But I am not speaking for them, right? Mm-hmm. But let me jump to that issue. Okay. So when it comes to the data subject, obligation, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So the thing is, we need to understand that data subject, they have rights. They have rights provided for them under the law. And when there's an issue, it's not always prudent that you rush to court. We have 119,000 breaches just in the first quarter of this year. Even if them go to court, there are going to be a lot of issues. So there are remedies under the law, right? There are remedies under the law. So number one is that the guide that was released recently, so it has a breach, data breach remediation, provision. If you go to Article 33 of that guideline, also I think Schedule 9 or thereabouts of that guideline, so also provide a form. They call it SNAG, So I can't remember the full name of that snack. So it's about grievance notice form that you fill, and then you report data breach to NDPC. So but then I would like to take it from the beginning of, let's say there's an incidence of data breach within an organization. Actually, the law does not say that whenever there's a data breach, you must inform the data subject. So this is how it works. Whenever there's a data breach, you only have the obligation as an entity to report that data breach to NDPC within 72 hours if that data breach is likely going to affect the freedom and right of the people involved. So, and we are talking about data breach. What does it even mean? It means when there is when the confidentiality, the integrity and accuracy of someone's data is under threat. This is when we talk about, we call it the breach tried, right? So it's possible that you can have a breach that might not really affect people's rights, right? So let's say you have a record of all the employees who have worked there, and that record got burnt. That's a breach, actually.
But if it gets burnt,
yes,
that's a breach, but it's destroyed.
Yes, because the reason is that data subjects have right to make requests for data you are storing. So let's say I'm trying to get a record of myself of my employment, the credit I got here, and I made the request. Give me this data, and I say, oh, sorry, it got burnt. That's a breach, right?
Yeah.
So it now said, so you only report if that breach is likely going to result in, is going to try to
negatively on the subjects.
Right.
Okay.
So, but unfortunately, the law now narrowed down when you can say it is likely going to result. Okay. It narrows it down to just three things, which for me it is very, very unfortunate. So number one is if it's going to expose that data subject to incidents of fraud, identity theft, I was going to affect the sensitive data of that particular person. So what happens if somebody wants to sell my data to cyberstalk me or cyberbully me? So that's a very, very big lacuna in the law. So, however, the funny thing now is that the law does not say you should even, tell the data subject of the breach. It's only said that if it's likely going to lead to high risk, like if there's high risk, like I said now, that's a very high risk, breach. Yeah. In that instance, you have the obligation to report.
Unfortunately, we will have to round up the conversation here, but it's very obvious that there is so much reform that needs to go into the process of securing data, whether with entities or individuals, or even responsibility for the individuals who are giving out their data, like myself and yourself who's watching.
Every single time I accept a cookie, a star dies. Every single time.
Oh, those cookies. Yeah.
Star dies.
I don't even know what flavor they are.
I have to put in my email so I can get access to read an article. A star dies. That's why we have starless guys. Gentlemen, thank you so much for coming. I appreciate you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much,
Thank you, Timilane, as well.
Thank you.